Text. Rewind. 7 decades of stories from Leonard Cheshire Disability. Heritage Lottery Fund, lottery funded. At Home with Court, 1955. A basic clock graphic counting down from 30 seconds. TSW Film and Television Archive. Telephone 017 52 663 322. The clock continues to count down. Scratchy black and white film. The Court Film Unit presents At Home with Court. Cameramen A. Carter and J. Harding. Fashions by Molly. Jumpy home movie style film in colour, showing the exterior of 2 large houses. Now the facade of a building with a vintage looking van parked outside. A young woman smiles into the camera. A young man is looking at the house, which appears to be derelict. It is a 2-storey house with tall chimneys and dormer windows. The house and its chimneys are gradually demolished. Clouds of dust rise from the site as one of the chimneys falls to the ground. Text. The new Court. Tall trees covered with blossoms and flowering shrubs. A swimming pool in the foreground, surrounded by grass and flower beds, with Court in the background. Text. Early morning. The building is long, with 2 stories, many windows, and a steep red-tiled roof. A nurse draws curtains and opens some French windows. She then carries a tray of mugs and approaches one of the residents lying in bed. An emaciated man carefully drinks from his mug as he lies back against the pillow. A plate of biscuits rests on his shoulder. Another man, unable to use his arms, picks up a shaving brush with his mouth and attaches it to a contraption on a basin and begins to vigorously soap his own chin. Next, with a razor replacing the shaving brush, he shaves himself using the same method. He uses quick, well-practiced head movements to shave around his cheeks and chin. A man reclines in a wheelchair, pipe in his mouth. The door opens and a staff member enters, carrying letters and a parcel. Text. Morning Post. The lady enters the room and hands the parcel and some letters to the man with the pipe, who wheels himself away. Text. Joy receiving a letter. A woman in a wheelchair is handed a letter. which she collects with one of her feet as her hands have limited motor skills. The woman grins widely as she begins to open the letter skillfully using her feet. She uses a foot to hold the letter up and reads it, turning to the other residents and laughing. A short-statured man lying back in a wheelchair propels himself into the room using his cane. He is handed his mail and then, smiling happily, propels his wheelchair out of the room backwards. Text: Morning teas. A man plays a harmonica, which is held up to his mouth by a wire contraption. A lady busily serves tea to residents from an urn on a trolley, which she then wheels away. Kitchen staff busily prepare meals. A small dachshund dog stands on a chair with its paws on the kitchen table, where a large bone has been placed. Several ladies are in the kitchen, laughing and chatting. One stirs a large pot on the oven, while another lady sweeps the floor. Others chat as they sit and peel vegetables. Another lady carefully whisks something in a small bowl. Two ladies stand at a sink, washing dishes and chatting. At the stove, the cook carefully removes a large pan and briefly displays its contents, laughing. She continues to stir the contents of the pan. Another smiling woman washes the floor from a bowl of water. Back at the sink, one of the women playfully points a fork at the other woman's back. A woman carefully waves her hand. Text: Joy ringing for lunch. Laughing, a woman rings a large bell by pulling the rope with one of her feet. A kitchen lady carves a joint of meat as residents are assisted into the dining room, some in wheelchairs, some using sticks. A male staff member playfully strokes the hair of a man in a wheelchair. The cheeky attendant then pretends to spar with a young man in a wheelchair. The room fills with residents who sit together in small groups to have their meal. Residents who need help with eating are assisted by staff or fellow residents. Text. Patients at work. Residents are busy with different craft activities, including basket weaving and toy making, some helping each other. A wooden duck toy on a long stick is wheeled back and forth. A man works on a camera, cleaning each of the lenses with a small brush. Text. Our photographer at work. A young woman enters the room where the man sits in a wheelchair, adjusting his camera. She sits down in a chair in front of him and arranges her dress and hair carefully. The young woman laughs uncontrollably before bending down to pick up something the man has dropped on the floor. It is his bow tie, which she carefully fastens back onto his collar. He smiles broadly. As she stands up again, he gently catches hold of her hand and kisses it. Text. Work in the pavilion. A male resident feeds paper into a machine he is operating. Another man operates a machine using a foot pedal. A woman, Joy, constructs a wooden toy using her feet. The man with the pipe operates a printing device while reclining in his wheelchair. Text. Jimmy on the lathe. A man operates a lathe, carefully shaping pieces of wood. Another man lies back in his wheelchair, polishing shoes. He cheerfully greets a female staff member, who hands him another shoe. She places the other shoe beside him on the floor. The man continues to polish the shoe in his hands. Text: Len has a date with Kitty. A young man in a dressing gown wheels his chair into a lift, which then takes him to another level. He arrives at his destination and smiles at a young woman in white nurse's uniform. She returns his smile and then begins to wash his hair while he sits in the bath. The young man is extremely thin and emaciated. The woman continues to wash his hair thoroughly with soap and water. Later, the young man, hair washed and in his dressing gown again, smiling. A nurse assists a man onto a bed, lifting his legs and then placing them into small slings attached to a pulley. He begins to exercise his legs, raising them up and down. Next, the nurse slips his arms into small slings. One hand is locked and has very limited movement. He rotates his arms using another pulley, then continues his vigorous leg exercises. Text: The Court Film Unit presents The Queen Mother. Cinecamera, Ted Sleeman. Directed by Neville Thomas. The Queen Mother enters the new building, accompanied by Leonard Cheshire and a senior nurse. Smiling, she graciously shakes hands with a curtsying nurse and a lady in a wheelchair, whom she chats to briefly. The Queen Mother meets other staff and chats with residents, stopping every now and then to see what crafts they are working on. Later, wearing a fur stole and shaking hands with staff, the Queen Mother stands at the door, preparing to leave. Smiling, she is accompanied outside by Leonard Cheshire. Staff and residents are gathered outside. The Queen Mother bends down to receive a gift from a man in a wheelchair. Finally, she waves goodbye and is driven away in the royal car. A man lying on a bed manoeuvres a large cabinet-like object on a tray table over his chest. He lowers the turntable inside it and places a record on the turntable and carefully positions the stylus over it. A BBC camera is directed towards Leonard Cheshire, sitting next to the man with the pipe. The camera crew starts to film the residents and staff as they go about their tasks. A tall man in a suit leans casually against a desk. After chatting to the residents, he gets up to leave and shakes their hands. A woman, holding maracas and wearing a wide-brimmed hat, with L for learner attached to her back, dances in the middle of the room. Text: Samba Fanny. Fanny continues her dance. Then, still wearing her L plate, she dances with a man. Text: Sister Ross being presented with gifts at her party. A tall, glamorous woman in evening dress is given a present. She reads the accompanying note. Text: Dear Lecourters, I can't say much as you can see. All I can say is thank you. Sister Ross looks up and smiles. The residents, smartly dressed for the occasion, look on. She appears to make a speech. Then, dressed in coat and hat, Sister Ross says goodbye, leaning down to kiss Joy in her wheelchair as she passes her in the doorway. Several people are gathered to say goodbye. Sister Ross is driven away, waving as the car moves away. An old bus with LeCourt on the side. Text: Loading the bus. A man is given a piggyback by a woman, who then helps him up into the bus. Other residents are wheeled up to the vehicle and assisted inside. A lady pushes the grinning, pipe-smoking man in his wheelchair towards the bus, where he wheels himself inside up a ramp. With everyone now on board, the bus drives off. It has a large hospital cross on the back doors. Text: At Tichborne Park. Crowds of people are gathered outdoors, the women in summer dresses. The LeCourt residents are there too, sitting in the sunshine and chatting. Several young men in identical white shirts and flannel trousers appear, one with a cricket ball in his hand. They mingle with the crowd. The LeCourt residents in their wheelchairs look on with the other spectators as a cricket team walks out onto the pitch. The sun is out and the men have rolled up the sleeves of their white shirts. At Le Court, a group of men heave a large metal roller over some rubble, which is laid to make a steep roadway. A girl in shorts rakes earth over the rubble as two young men empty more earth out of their wheelbarrows for her. Residents, most in wheelchairs, are gathered on the grass around a swimming pool. They are joined by a young man pushing a laughing young woman in a wheelbarrow. Everyone appears relaxed and smiling. As the staff and residents chat, one young woman splashes her legs in the pool. A young couple lark about in the wheelbarrow. A smartly dressed woman stands beside a bicycle, a small dog sitting in the basket in front of the handlebars, and then rides off, accompanied by another woman. A number of residents work in the Le Court garden, raking loose grass and vegetation into piles. Another man mows the grass near the house. Two young women in sundresses are with a resident who is digging with a spade. One of the women mops his brow. It is the man with the bow tie, and he smiles into the camera before falling backwards, still grinning. The women lift him up, unhurt, and he continues digging. At the pool, the young man who was mowing grass carries a woman over to the water and throws her in, fully dressed. The pool is shallow, and she wades out again, laughing. Then she takes a running leap back into the water again. A number of vintage cars with smartly dressed passengers, including several glamorous women, drive up. There is a large official-looking gathering outside Le Court, and a man addresses them in front of a microphone. A marching band in uniform entertains spectators at the occasion. A young boy approaches three glamorous women and asks for their autographs. Filmed in black and white, official guests walking through the crowds and the band playing. A little girl glides down a tall slide in a special wooden box. Guests walk by. the woman carrying a posy of flowers and the men with flowers in their lapels. One of the gentlemen residents uses tweezers to delicately apply gold leaf to a small object on a table next to a display of decorative brooches. Text: Patients buying at shop. A number of people, including 2 men in wheelchairs, exchange money for small items at the small shop at Court and are served by one of the male residents. Sitting in the lounge, residents chat. One man playfully kisses the hand of one of the women, while the others look on in amusement. A lady resident greets a nurse, who hands her a cigarette and lights it for her after several attempts. She sits and smokes, admiring a vase of colourful flowers on the table next to her wheelchair. Joy, laughing, has her hair combed. Text: Night at the local. Leonard Cheshire and another gentleman greet 2 members of the clergy outside Court. They shake hands and go inside. In the dining room, Leonard Cheshire sits at the head of the table, surrounded by distinguished-looking guests. They are served by waiters in white jackets. Later, the guests are farewelled and driven away. Meanwhile, sitting in a pub lounge, the smartly dressed residents and staff drink and chat together during an evening out. Everyone is smiling and laughing. Text: The next morning. One of the residents is getting a shave from a male staff member while lying in bed. Leonard Cheshire laughing as he addresses the cameraman. Text: Courting. Camera: Ted Sleeman. Screenplay: Al Finch. Charm: Anne Hughes. Director: Neville Thomas. Colour by Kodachrome. A man sits in a chair in the garden and looks at his watch. Text: She is late. The man looks over to his right, where a young woman appears from behind a tree. They greet each other with a quick embrace. Meanwhile, another man, wearing a flat cap, a large flower in his lapel, walks in the garden and checks his watch. He turns and points at something, looking with mock shock and horror. He rushes down towards the couple, and the two men begin throwing playful punches at each other. Text: In you go. During the scuffle, the man with the cap is pushed into the swimming pool, fully clothed. He flails about in the shallow water, then approaches the edge of the pool where he hands the woman the flower from his lapel. Text: My darling. The woman delightedly accepts the flower, then pushes her bow into the water as well. The man in the cap gets out of the pool and hands her another flower. She sees someone coming and flings both flowers down, and the man in the cap falls back into the water. The woman runs off with a third man who has appeared, leaving her other two men in the water. The men shake hands and swim off together, soon reaching the other side of the pool. The flat cap floats in the water between the two flowers. Text: A Court Film Unit production. Directed by Neville Thomas, IAC. The end. Rewind. Leonard Cheshire Disability, supported by the National Lottery through the Heritage Lottery Fund.